music.
Party's not a bat, he's a man who fights crime. And we're gonna watch him fight for a minute at a time. With John and Niall and a guest who doesn't rhyme. It's Bat Minute!
Hello, and welcome once again to Bat Minute Forever, the podcast where either by sea or by air, we are going to go through each minute of Joel Schumacher's 1995 film Batman Forever, 1 minute at a time. I am one of the hosts, Niall McGowan.
And I am the other host, John Parker, who has sunk your battleship.
Oh, that's right, the glorious career of the Batboat. 1 minute. It features in 1 minute, people. But to talk with us about the brief career of the Batboat, we have returning guests from last season, full-time content creator on Patreon. It is one Brittany Simon.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you back. And it turns out, unbeknownst to us, this was a perfect minute, which we will get to.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
But yeah, this is minute 102. Q102, if you grew up in my hometown, that was the local radio station, so I'm just throwing that out there.
Yes, that means a lot to all of us. Yes, Niall.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And this minute begins with, the farewell to Commissioner Gordon, the little snippet of the last of Pat Hingle for this movie, and ends 1 minute later with the destruction of the aforementioned Batboat. And it seems like, don't worry, John. I think Robin's dead. I think we got rid of him.
Finally, he's gone.
It looked like we were going to have to deal with that guy a lot more in the next season, but I'm feeling like the Denzel Washington gif of him, like,
yeah.
thank God.
Yeah.
But thankfully, no, he's out of the franchise.
You can't bring a character like this back, right?
No goddamn way. But
the most handsome of all characters, might I add. I had a huge thing for him. Robin was in all my fantasies as a young girl. Oh my gosh. And my parents would take me to Six Flags to see the Batman show. And Robin would show up. And I was like, there's my husband right there. But Poison Ivy also showed up. And I was like, twofer. I see a throuple.
I've tried to explain this to Niall all throughout that in the 90s, Chris O'Donnell was like Mr. Sexy.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Oh, totally. What was that movie he was in? It was like a snow movie, and it was like the biggest thing ever. And he was it was after Batman, so everyone
Vertical Limit.
Yes,
That's it. Yeah.
Yes, that was my. Can I say podcast? I don't know.
Oh, you can. We'll just
Is
bleep
language
it out.
okay?
It's fine.
You
Okay.
can say what you like, but you'll get beeped.
Okay, perfect. I'll keep it PG. But I loved him, and Robin was so grown up in this movie, and I was like, hello. I mean, I missed the leather and I missed the mask, but I mean, I could deal.
See, I just found Chris O'Donnell to be a very bland-looking human being.
How dare you?
I've been stunned this whole season to find out, he was the heartthrob. And even now, looking back in old magazine articles, they had little pictures of him going like, "Oh, look, it's Robin, the boy wonder," or should we say, the man stud? And I'm like, what the hell is this about?
Absolutely.
It's genius casting, I think, because they have picked someone to appeal to everyone here. They've picked someone for the straight girls. They've picked someone for the gay guys. They've picked someone for the bisexuals. It's like they know what they're doing with this.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, I don't know how far or how quick you guys want to jump into what I observed from the clip, but I got some stuff to say.
No, but just by all means, go right ahead. Whatever you want to bring up.
Well, okay, so obviously my job is basically observing alternative lifestyles and observing human behavior and trying to see the kind of hidden messages. And the moment I opened up this clip and I see this rocket through the air, I'm like, well, that's a penis. Well, that's a rod system. That's what that is. And then the whole scene, of course, is they're basically in the water. And I love this, the idea of moisture being a part of the scene as an erotic tone, but there's obviously sort of a give and take between Riddler and Two-Face, where they're playing sort of this catch and mouse game, but also enjoying it with themselves. And I thought to myself, this would be a wonderful sort of intimate scene to do with couples who were kind of multi-partnered, so polyamory maybe, where they literally did a sex game out of Battleship, and I was like, this is genius. This one little clip, this 1 minute has inspired the next year of all my like escapades.
Oh my God, I'm never going to look at it the same way again, in a good way. In a good way.
Good, I'm glad. Well, you know me, I grew up watching these movies. I grew up during this generation, and so for me, all of them were heartthrobs. I mean, all of them. Even Two-Face was that weird bad guy who was so ridiculous, but you kind of like loved how he had all these women and all this like status around him. It's great.
Well, what do you make of the talking about polyamory?
Yeah.
Two-Face in this movie is flat out in a polyamorous relationship with Sugar and Spice. It seems like that's just their lifestyle, is that they're almost full-time kinksters, basically. At least those two.
Absolutely. Batman in general is some of the alternative communities. We love Batman because in general, the Joker also had a thing with Poison Ivy, right? And Harley. And there was this whole thing where like Harley would go to Poison Ivy every time Joker rejected her and then come back to Joker. Let's be honest, we all know they were doing it. So it's kind of one of those things where, well, and actually, I mean, it's amazing in comics how alternative relationships kind of sink in, because even the author of Wonder Woman was a BDSM and polyamorous person. So, I mean, it's in the comics. So Batman is just another example. And Two-Face, growing up for me, watching the cartoons, the animated series, I mean, Two-Face obviously was a weirdly lovable character who wanted sort of like love around him, but also felt rejected by his looks, his face, his demeanor. And so it was kind of like this give and take. But without a doubt, in observing this character in this particular movie, there is obviously a lot of openness happening. And I think that's fabulous because, I mean, just to be poly doesn't mean you have to technically be a good guy, and bad guys deserve love too.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I think that's about the most love we've got for this version of Two-Face, though, because I think a lot of people tend to be like, well, he's nothing like the character is supposed to be, but well, you know, that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve love, though.
I mean, you know what I mean? I try hard not to judge a person's journey, but in observing him, I'm sure we could be critical of his ethical levels, but if we observe him as a fun character, I think we would all agree they are so ridiculous, and it's so fun that way. I mean, even Riddler and him, his energy together, I'm like, just get it over, men. Just bump uglies. Let's do it. Like, I love it. I love the dynamics. I love it so much.
Yeah, and I like them playing a game here over who can, who can win. It's quite, it's almost like a sexual game between the two of them. Who's got the power?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anytime you have a power dynamic, right? An exchange of I am the top, you are the bottom. There is a clear battle before you get to that point about who gets to reign supreme. And of course, it's just as fun to be the bottom because you're receiving all the glory. But like, don't get me wrong. There's obviously a distinct battle going on in this very intense game of Battleship, which I think every kid who grew up during that generation. Did you guys play Battleship as kids?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I never fully wrapped my head around it. I was a stupid kid. I liked my video games, but I would play it.
I like how you say you're stupid, but you play video games. Like one of the most complex mediums, depending on how you play them.
Oh, I find them so easy because I've had them all my life. But like board games and card games always confuse the hell out of me.
Well, in Battleship, there's so many ways to cheat and have fun. Stacking your boats on one place, putting everything in a weird shape. There's always a way to sort of trick and have fun and amplify that kind of power dynamic during that game. I'm not exaggerating. This is not for the show. I'm definitely going to add that game into my escapades. Like, I'm serious. This is so funny. What if you put like positions or things to do on each of the spots, and every time you sunk a ship, you had to do it? Bam. Game.
Oh, there you go. Genius.
Yes, I'm really good at this. I'm telling you.
We also had a lot of talk like back when Sugar and Spice featured in the movie, because they're tragically underused in this film.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Well, not by us. They're our logo. Me and you are Sugar and Spice.
And everything nice.
Oh, But of course, I don't know if you know, Brittany, but in the original script, right up until like the 11th hour, they were going to be called Leather and Lace. And then the WB were like, nah, it's too much. It's too much.
That's too much? Really? That's where we draw the line? I'm sorry. The whole series is basically like a BDSM film, like disguised as a comic book series. Come on, people. We're all in leather. Batman has toys and gear on his belt. Police. Police.
We were just like trying to establish like back when they featured, because Spice seems to be a dom. And Sugar would theoretically be the sub, but then where's Two-Face coming in there? Is he's a switch?
Yes, I think he would be a switch, honestly, an observation, because without a doubt, any bad guy associated with Batman, including the Joker, I think we would all agree there's like a love relationship there. There's this need to fulfill each other. Without each other, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, where does their role even come in? So Two-Face, I feel like, is sort of an independent bad guy. He kind of does what he wants, even more so than Joker. I really do think like Two-Face is kind of even in every movie I've ever seen him depicted in, he's always kind of like, I'm in this, I'm out of this, I'm kind of an anti-hero, I'm kind of a bad guy. He kind of just does his own thing. And I kind of love that about him.
Well, that makes sense that if he would be a switch anyway, because the whole point of his damn character is he's like this multifaceted, he flips between one thing, then the other.
I think the confusion I had was just because it seems as if the evil Two-Face side is with Spice more, which would make you think like, oh, I guess good Harvey Dent is with Sugar. Whereas you think it would be the other way around if you think the Harvey Dent would want to be dommed by Spice, whereas Two-Face would want to dom Sugar.
Oh, that would be much more interesting than what we get.
Yeah, that's actually true.
But then, the thing is, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors with these people. It's like, oh, it's all over the goddamn place. And as we've mentioned, too, it seems as soon as Jim Carrey shows up, Sugar's shacking up with him. So God knows what these guys are doing. Like,
well, they're obviously, they're good at sharing. That's for sure. There seems to be a lot of that going on. And in observing Harvey Dent, because you're right, I kind of forget, like, before Two-Face, but of course this man had a complicated, position, and not only the comics as like a person, but as like a sense of ethics and morals, and he sort of fights with that. And that actually is a tenet of BDSM, is we try to take real life situations, create a scene, which has a beginning and an end, a moment of interaction with a power dynamic that allows us to explore our humanity. And so I can see how Two-Face would just, oh my gosh, him in a little scene, just exploring his Harvey Dent and then his Two-Face. How cool would that be? I would pay $1 billion to see that happen.
That would be an odd announcement, though, if they're like, "This is the way we're going with Batman now." It's like, we're gonna have an exploration of Two-Face's sexual preferences. And it's like, is this like in some way? Is this like for kids? Like, no, not at all.
I mean, are they ever like to an extent? I love actually comics because they really do help children learn how sort of real life conflict can come about through superheroes and villains. I mean, without a doubt, I feel like comic books and comic series are almost always created for adults with almost the help. It's weird because it hits both audiences. I mean, I'm a grown woman. You guys are grown men. I don't know how many times I've, been in a comic book store and there's always more adults than children at this point, I think, in history.
Oh, yeah.
And, a big part of that is that these stories are universal. Anytime you have a bad guy who comes from a good beginning and has a conflict of character, he fights and battles with himself, well, that's going to turn into one of the greatest stories of humankind, which is the fall of man and possibly the redemption of them. But do we ever get to see that redemption with Two-Face? Does he ever get to be Harvey again? And that's kind of like the thing we're holding on to. Some of us are holding on to. I kind of like him as Two-Face.
You don't want to see him change, man.
No way. Stay evil. Stay poly. Stay BDSM.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because like at the end of this, the way he's defeated in this is kind of like an exploitation of Harvey Dent, because it's like Bruce going, "Oh, but Harvey, you need to use your coin." And then for a brief moment, we do get like, "Of course, Bruce, you're right. You've always been a true friend," and stuff. Oh. And just that little sliver of like, here's the guy on the verge of like, well, there's his his good side again.
Yeah.
That's what Batman uses to end up killing the guy. It's like, oh, that's Batman for you.
Well, isn't that kind of poetic too? Like, isn't that kind of poetic, the way that a human being can sort of the humanity of the human being is also like the sacrifice of self if they are also the destructive person. Because sometimes I think we have to kill our egos to be humbled again. And in some ways, I think that could have been what the scene was depicting. Not to get too much into philosophy, but like it's kind of one of those moments, or maybe I just read into it too much, but I really do think comic books are an exploration into the human spirit completely. So I think that was kind of poetic.
Yeah.
And then we have to ruin everything you're saying by talking about a stupid boat.
No, that boat, that is the symbol of everything they've built towards, and how easy your life can crumble in a moment. That's what that symbolizes.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love it. Because it is taken out very simply, isn't it? It's ridiculous. What the hell?
As we were mentioning, like in the last episode, it's so blatant that the reason this was put into the script is like, you gotta sell more toys, man. So put him in a boat. It's like, I don't care how long he's in the boat. Just have the boat on screen. That way we can make a toy out of it.
I also refuse to call it the Bat Boat, because Batman doesn't use it. Robin's in it. So what are we going to call it? We've called it the Bird Boat.
I'm sticking with Night Boat.
Night
because it just makes me think of The Simpsons. So that's always.
I watched the Night Boat one today. What the hell?
But that's the thing. Like, we only have to talk about it for this 1 minute, so it's like, well, it doesn't really matter what we end up calling it. But one thing,
the Robin Rocket, the Rockin' Robin.
Ooh, I kind of like the Robin Rocket, because when he comes off, it's just he blasts way off. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
that's one of those things though. Like in the novelizations of this, like again, because Peter David, the guy who wrote the novelization, is always trying to like fix little things with Batman Forever, and he specifically mentions they go in stealth mode, so there's no rocketing. It's like, no, why would they storm over to the hideout? They'd want to go in quiet. But so he's like, oh, the lights are off and there's no thrusters and things like that. Whereas Joel Schumacher is like, hey, you thrust away, baby.
How many toys do you think actually sold though, with just a minute of a scene, or just to have it on there for a second? How many kids wanted the boat that didn't make it?
Hey, if I was a little bit younger, I would have been that kid. Like for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff, I wanted every toy you could get. Some weren't even in it. They were just random toys. Like, I need it.
They got into like Garbage Man, Michelangelo and stuff. Like nothing to do with the friggin' movie.
I had the Ghostbusters toys of weird stuff, like that toilet that turns into a monster.
Oh my gosh, wonderful.
Although that's the one thing though. Well, actually, while the boat's there, we'll briefly mention, of course, the Bat Boat is a thing that does feature in the comic books, and it originated in Detective Comics 110 in April 1946 in the storyline Batman and Robin Go to Scotland Yard, wherein those two guys were asked by Scotland Yard to come over to merry old England to solve a crime wherein some guy was recreating the murders of Jack the Ripper. Oh, no, not Jack the Ripper. Moriarty. Because I thought Jack the Ripper would be a bit
quite different. Yeah.
But in gratitude, Scotland Yard then gifted the HMS Bat Boat to Batman and Robin, and also had a statue erected of them for solving one case. And it's like, what about all the cops? They're solving cases all the time. They're not them getting any statues. But...
Hey, no, don't you know how the police works? If you solve a case, you get a statue somewhere in the country.
Fabulous.
That's true fact.
That's what all those lamb bananas are about there throughout Liverpool. It's like, it doesn't have to be a statue of you. It just has to be a statue.
Yeah, have we brought up that, like anything about that on the show? That the symbol of Liverpool is a statue that's half lamb, half banana.
What?
Yeah, I know. We live in a weird place.
It
does make sense.
What does it symbolize? But what does it symbolize? I don't get it.
If I remember, it's to do with the two biggest exports that founded the city. Whilst also ignoring the fact it was a major part of the slave trade.
Oh, beautiful. Poetic.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be exports. The exports would be the lamb, and the imports would be the banana. Is that right? Niall, do you know?
I imagine I'd have to. Because you imagine bananas would have to grow in sort of warmer climates
I think
than
that's
England.
Yeah.
So.
I think all the bananas coming into England came here, and we would send out lambs from... Liverpool's a big port.
Now, to be clear, is it a half a body of a lamb with a banana head, or is it a lamb with a really big banana?
It's like a yellow. It's like a yellow lamb with its tail arches up into a banana, Really.
Oh, okay. Well, I need to travel now just to see this.
But if you choose to go, by all means, go by Batboat. Because they'll get you around there in half the time.
I would 100% want a Batboat, for the record. Or a Robin rocket.
That's what we're going to call it now. Who wants Robin's rocket?
The guy who created the Batboat, though, is a fellow called Donald Clough Cameron. And he also co-created Alfred, the character of Alfred Pennyworth, who first appeared in the storyline, "Here Comes Alfred," with an exclamation point. And then, of course, the Batboat ended up featuring in the 60s show. And then, apparently, it failed that version from the 60s show. A replica that was used for promotional purposes failed to sell at auction quite recently. They just put it up for auction and just nobody wanted it, which is pretty devastating, really.
Well, if you give us enough Patreon money, people will buy it.
And this Batboat, though, this is currently on display in like one of the Warner Brothers like Hollywood museums, and it is all the tech details for anyone out there who's a boat gearhead is that it's 300 horsepower, and it has a custom aluminium block Ford 351 C1 V8 engine. It was created. Oh, and it also has a hot air balloon igniter to simulate the jet thruster. So that's what that thing is coming out the back there. And it was invented by a guy called, was built by a guy called Joel Shepard. And the engine was assembled by Redline Marine, who sold it to Warner Brothers like it was any other engine, but they did not give them the 3-year warranty, apparently. And they said the quote was, "Batman is far too rough on the equipment," which is a very like. In the article, it's very like, oh yes, that's very droll. Yes,
Amen.
Basically, they're saying you're going to trash this. We're not going to honor any kind of warranty.
It's like, well, you're really buying a thing for the purposes of blowing it up. So it's like,
how much was the auction giving it away for, or selling it for?
I think it was up at like 14,000 or something like that.
What?
Yeah,
what? We could raise that money. We should raise that money. I want it now so bad. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Tragically, that's not this Batboat, though. That's like the old 60s dinghy
but
that Adam
still,
West was going around.
You know how many scenes we could do? You know how many things we could create? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that.
So I looked here while we were talking into the history of battleships. Oh. And I didn't realize, it makes perfect sense, right? But I had no idea it started out as a pen and paper game. And sort of around the First World War is where they think, but it's up for debate, this is the problem. And like the French had a game very similar called Lerczak, which is cool. And they played that in World War One. There's another one called Salvo, and they're all from around the same kind of time. I like all these.
That's one of the things, though. You think, like, oh, we invented it during World War One. It's like, haven't you had enough of friggin' boats blowing up? It's like, no, we want more.
More destruction.
Humans we love a challenge. Like, I'll tell you that. And there's nothing more glorious than a victory. Even a consensual one in a game.
Well, and they must be playing a game, actually, because here's another thing. Right, you see them playing the battleships and stuff. It's very back and forth. They're playing by the rules with each other. They could just kill Robin in an instant. They don't.
Well,
they could just set all these bombs off in one go and kill him. They're in it for the fun.
That's the thing, though. What bugs me with, and I'll bring it up again in the next couple of weeks, is that, okay, so I'm thinking maybe it might have something to do with this. There's a weird Mandela effect with this movie for me, because there's a line I was certain was in the film, because it's in the novelization, it's in the comic book adaptation, etc., where after, the Batcave's destroyed and Bruce goes down to reveal the sonar suit that he's in, on all those other variations, he says it's a good thing they didn't know about the cave beneath the cave, which is where he's hiding all this other gear. And I was like, I could have swore that was in the film, but it's not. Oh. And I wonder if they took it out. It just seems a bit strange to me that Riddler and Two-Face seem so prepared for not only Batman to be showing up. After you think he'd be more like, I thought I destroyed all his gear. What the hell is he showing up in a goddamn jet for?
Hey.
And also, he's like, well, as far as they know, Batman's a solo act. Like, are they not going like, well, Is this that old butler we knocked out? Is he in the boat? Who the hell's this other guy showing up?
I think if your evil lair is getting attacked, you don't have time for these kind of questions. You know, you just accept it. There's another Batman kind of guy. I don't know. And he's Batman. He's probably got stuff all over the place.
Yeah, I just wondered if they have like other games set up for like, well, if he approaches us by like bicycle, we've got like a snakes and ladders game on the other side.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. I will say though, I mean, don't we all? Okay, so I love villain movies because you can live vicariously through the villain and kind of live out your most petty, like, immoral thoughts and then never do them because it's bad. But the thing that's kind of funny about it is that if they win, well, that's no fun. Like, then there's not a next time. And I think we all agree that all the villains in Batman love that there's going to be a next time.
It does seem that like that actually rings very true for at least this version of the Riddler, because we know Two-Face has been friggin' dying to kill Batman this whole film. But yeah, there is a real element of like they could have shot him square in the face, and when they broke into the mansion, and Riddler's like, no, if you do that, he won't learn anything. And then I guess I don't know if he'd be comfortable killing him now, or like when they take out the Batwing and the boat, are they kind of thinking like, that's not the end of him. Like, we all know Batman's going to survive an idle plane crash. But so he'll be like, that's why Riddler's like, oh, now the real game begins, and gets in his spangly outfit, and he's like, oh, here, because he knows he's still coming. He's like, is there a pleasure they have in like drawing out the like, yep, we just want every to hit him every single way till he gets right up to our goddamn throats, and then they're gonna hope they're gonna be able to kill him, I guess.
Well, what's the thrill for a villain better than a superhero that's actually sort of like a challenge, right? Because if the Riddler or Two-Face or any of these people, if they really wanted to just like kill people, they just go kill regular bad guys who are boring, or good guys who are boring. But Batman is he's a question, he's a mystery, he's a secret lover, he's will he come back? Will there be more? And you kind of always hope because, well, he's the best game they've ever played.
Yeah,
he's a riddle. The best riddle of all.
Exactly.
In talking about riddles and props, as we were talking about the Batboat, as these guys go to sit down, I was happy to see, is the first time I've noticed it, the big question mark chairs that they've got.
Oh.
Because this is a thing, I'll put it in the Skype chat. This always used to bug me when they were promoting the movie. They always had these pictures of specifically Nicole Kidman every time with this big green question mark chair. And as you look at it, you're like, that doesn't function as a chair. Because you can't sit in that. Like, you're just going to fall out the back. Like, it's so pointless.
But I kind of want it.
Yeah, I want it anyway. I don't care.
I want it. Also, as a BDSMer, of course, this is a great chair for bondage because they can tie them down. It can go loops through the top, through the sides. Like, I'm seeing the functionality of this chair, and if somebody can figure out where I can get one, I swear I will get one.
Hey,
we'll get you one made special, don't worry.
Yeah, it could be a woodshop project for yourself, Brittany. Like, give yourself a present.
That's true. I mean, I am learning to work with all kinds of woods right now because I want to build my own tables and chairs and furniture. So honestly, this looks hard though, guys. The curvature, the change in shape. I don't know if I'm good enough for that yet, but it will be a goal.
Yeah,
that's the mission. That's when you know you've made it.
Yes, exactly. Could you imagine though? This would be a great cosplay to do. Holy crap! If you could have the chair and then cosplay Nicole Kidman, like, oh my gosh, like, praise be.
We'll have to ask. I know she's not in the scene, Brittany, but what are your opinions of Dr. Chase Meridian as a character? Because she is, of course, insanely kinky as a person. Like, she wears it on her sleeve.
I mean, I'm proud, honestly. It gave me something to... I'm not exaggerating. Like, most BDSMers who talk about their childhoods talk about, like, having, like, pretty good ones for the most part. Like, my childhood was always positive in regards to how I formed sort of a love for power dynamics, which was mostly through politics. But there is nothing better than watching a woman who not only owns it, but is so blatantly just, like, dripping of it. It's wonderful because it gives you something to look forward to. It gives you a reason to want to get older and become, like, that woman person, because I don't know how it is for you guys when you finally felt like men, if you do feel like men, but like I felt like a woman in my late 20s. So I had these women characters. Like, honestly, in the Batman films, I love all the female characters because as much as they were sex symbols, they were also power symbols. And so you have to love the complexity of them, because I feel like the female villains especially, or like the complicated nature of them, was rooted in something bigger than themselves. Like Poison Ivy, right? She was bigger than herself. She had this love for something bigger than herself, which again was used for villainy, but it's okay because it's so much fun. It's just too much fun, guys. Too much fun.
Mm.
No, it's good to hear that, because going through minute by minute has made me like Chase, whereas before I'm like, oh, she's just the woman who just wants Batman. That's it. That's all there is to her. But when you go through minute by minute, you see it's actually a lot more interesting and complicated than that.
I think it's more just it's more the fact that my problem with her was just that she ends up inevitably just the damsel in distress.
That is a problem. Yeah,
she's quite empowered in the beginning, but at the end of the movie, it's just like she is just like, yes, here is the thing. She is the carrot on the stick for Batman, basically. And I felt that was quite. That's the major detriment of the character to me. As like we've been saying throughout the whole season, Brittany, we prefer if the reveal at the end was that Chase Meridian was a villain. She actually became like a Harley Quinn kind of character, maybe, or
yeah. And can I say, I want to challenge sort of that premise a little bit, because I will tell you, as a tough, independent woman myself, there is nothing better than a big, strong ex-man or woman coming in and rescuing my ass, because I know I could do it. But how much better is it to have this kind of dynamic? And psychologically, men need things bigger than themselves. They need to be useful. And, well, what does she do? She creates an opportunity for Batman to be, say it with me, useful. And so it's kind of a perfect storm, guys. A perfect storm, in all honesty. And I think, like, in observing old films, I have a love for classics, because I think like those power dynamics were clear, because even vanilla people, non-BDSM, experience a power dynamic. Like in this instance, the damsel in distress, just put there purely for that, can be a little tedious, but I think we would all agree she had something a little bit more to offer, and they should have explored it, but the fact that it existed sort of allowed the dynamic to be fulfilled in the fantasy of the viewer.
Yeah, at least it was there at all.
Yes.
It was just refreshing to see a female character be so outwardly sexual, but it feel like genuine and real, and it's coming from her. She's getting what she wants.
Oh, yeah.
She's pursuing Batman for her own ends.
Yeah. She is kind of following in the footsteps of Catwoman from the previous movie, though, because she was really someone who was wearing everything out in the open and really pursuing what she wanted, like in a very, very aggressive, active fashion.
Well, in which case then, although it'd be a better story in some ways for our idea for it to be a villain, isn't it also more interesting that there can be a female character like that who isn't villainous?
Oh, yeah.
Because they often do that, don't they? Like James Bond, right? It's always there's always an evil Bond girl as well as a good one. It's the evil one who's always pursuing him and trying to sleep with him.
Very good point. Very good point. And I don't know how you guys feel about Nicole Kidman in general, but I think she always, in my head, is like the most innocent-looking devil I've ever seen, and that's why I've always enjoyed her. Like, she literally encompasses both, which is sort of perfect for Batman, because so does he.
No, that's perfect,
Yeah.
And, but that's the thing, that so we do, and talk of having fun, these guys, of course, are having a grand old time with this giant game of Battleship. And this is for all, like, talking about all the sort of, sexually charged, sort of slightly subversive elements to the scene. This also really, really harkens straight back to not so much the 60s TV show, but like the 60s comics. Because this is the kind of thing like they were trying to do. Remember way back when they were first writing drafts of Batman in like the early 80s. Like I remember we talked about it back in the first season, the Tom Mankiewicz script ended with a fight between Batman and the Joker on top of a giant typewriter. And the Joker was like pushing buttons, and like the typewriter would try to, like, the keys would land on Batman, and Silver St. Cloud was in there. It was a whole big crazy thing. But at that, in the 80s, they were like, nah, that's way, way too silly. We're trying to get away from that. Like, by all means, have him go up to the top of a bell tower, like as a gothic romance, and, friggin' Joker falls off and gets attached to a gargoyle or grotesque, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, get it right.
it's like so back in a mere 6 years earlier, that was like, oh no, that kind of silliness we ain't going for at all. But by 95, the idea of the villains actually having like it's a giant game of Battleship. That's literally what it is. Like we've got the not only the the setup of it, but we've also got like little bat symbols that we're moving around the screen that we've made and stuff. It's like it's full on into like a massive jump back into Silver Age comics. That was always their mandate. Was like, yeah, we're harkening back. But here it gets really, really, really apparent here. They're like, yeah, it's full. This movie is. I don't want to say it's a regression, but it is a development into what Batman used to be before Tim Burton, etc., changed it.
Yeah. Now I have a question. Do you think that? Because I observe children, I've worked in childcare, through my 20s, and I'll tell you, like, their imaginations, their default when they're fake fighting is always to create some sort of weird, sensational, almost comical scenario that they have to get through. And do you feel like when adults are writing these scripts, they are thinking of the most outrageous, ridiculous, funny, childlike thing for two grown men to do together? Because, like, Battleship is, like, harkened to old, like, it's literally a child's game, but it was also created by adults, like you said earlier, inspired by war. So it's kind of interesting. Do you feel like adults always have this childlike almost imagination, even when we're battling it out?
Oh, yeah. That's got to be in at least playing sort of a background role, right? You never fully get rid of that.
Yeah, yeah. Because all those sort of instincts for battle are so immature in their own way, no matter how sophisticated they get. Like, you're gonna have like, oh, it's a strategy game. It's all about like outsmarting the other person. It's like, well, but it's also a very, for want of a better word, basic in terms of conflict. There's no like, weird enough with the Riddler, you'd almost think like a game of riddles would be more sophisticated in his mind. Would be like, well, yeah, we can intellectualize this out. But he has gone for like, no, they're coming towards me in rocket ship and, rocket jet. So I'm going to blow them up. And I'm going to do it in the most childish manner possible, really.
Speaking of his intellect, I have a weird problem with what he says as well here. Because Two-Face picks the square B12. And Riddler declares that as his favorite vitamin
yes.
for our American listeners. So I thought, well, I see all these things. I take supplements. I don't know what half of them do. So I was like, what's B12 do specifically? And it's a nutrient that keeps the body's nerves and blood cells healthy, helps make DNA, the genetic material in the cells. And it prevents, like, anemia and things like that. Now, I thought, well, how does that relate to the Riddler? Why wouldn't he pick one specifically to do with the brain? Because wouldn't that be much more not only funny but make sense as well? You'd be like, oh, okay, yes, you're all about brain power. No, B12.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like when I saw that scene, I laughed and I was like, that is the most villainous dad joke I've ever heard. Like, it's almost, so in that moment, I wonder if it's like every other dad joke. It almost doesn't make sense, but it also it's funny because it's like, oh, I see what you did there, Riddler. I get it. Yeah. Thanks, Dad.
I adore dad jokes.
Oh, of course. They're the lifeblood of like the universe.
I don't get where they come from, though. I think once you become a dad, like you're issued with a manual on how to do it by the government or something.
I make dad jokes all the time, though. Like I'm not a dad, so it's just
you're a stand-in dad. You're like a babysitter, a live-in babysitter, though, aren't you?
Yes, that's the thing now. Like, when I was ever to become a father, it's like, oh my god, would my powers just surge? Like, would it just become
unlimited power?
I mean, that's even a goal for myself. My dad is a master dad joke teller, and I tell him all the time, I was like, Dad, I hope my dad jokes are as good as yours. He's like, well, you'll never really be a dad. I was like, how dare you? Oh. I will be so funny. Mom jokes are not quite the same. They're like more, I don't know how to say it, but dad jokes are just too good. They're too good not to want to be a dad joke person.
The thing about the B12 thing, though, again, this is one of those kind of shockers where that's in, like, the earliest draft of the script, where it feels like that, if you, again, like you're saying, John, if you're going to write it, wouldn't you put it as a vitamin that has something to do with, like, boosting brain cells or something.
Yeah.
But because the way that's left like that, where it's like, oh, it's nothing to do with anything, it feels like a Jim Carrey improv. But it's weirdly not. Like, it's
One of the few times it's not.
There's a couple of times he's come up with things that are like, that must be him riffing. And I was like, no, they wrote that in the script. And Jim Carrey's like, yeah, well, I mean, I can't think of anything better to say, so this is what I'm doing.
Well, what would he say? Is there another vitamin that they could use to translate to the game? Because I don't know of one. I don't know my vitamins very well.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be one. I don't know whether the game would have the right squares, but nobody's making them do the gag. You could do a different joke.
Yeah. Because he does do, like, all the stuff that comes up, like, later on, like, oh, I hope they can find the little black box. Like, that's Jim Carrey improv. That's not the script.
Yeah.
So, like, he was coming up with stuff, but it was, like, something, I don't know, if it's a contractual obligation. It's like, you have to have the B12 joke in there. Or maybe it's just because back in 95, there wasn't, like, access to Google. So everyone on set were like, I guess that jokes makes sense. Like, I don't know anything about vitamin.
Yeah, no one's going to look it up. It's fine.
No. That's the thing, though, Brittany. Like, what is your opinion of Jim Carrey, though? Because I know he is now, like, he is one of the elements that sort of dates this film the most. Like, this is Jim Carrey at the actually kind of surprisingly brief period of time where he was, like, the king of Hollywood. Like, he was surrounding area of popularity, like, in the next decade before he kind of vanished a little bit.
Yeah.
But, the 94, 95 is like, that's the guy, like, unbeatable level. So, but him being in this position almost by default dates the movie. But were you ever a Jim Carrey fan, or?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I mean, when did The Mask come out? Was it before or after? What gave him the opportunity to do The Mask? Because the Mask is the most Jim Carrey film like I've ever seen in my life. But I will say Jim Carrey's fabulous. And if you observe their body language during the Battleship game, like him and Two-Face, there is such a distinct childlike perfection to the way they're moving, like the exaggerated like inflections, the moving of their bodies. And I just sat there and I thought, this is so perfect for Jim Carrey. Because what is he at the end of the day? He's like the biggest kid in the world. Even through his art now as like an older person, his art is humorous. So it's kind of like always going to be a part of him and who he was. And he did set a tone for that time in history. I mean, with Ace Ventura and everything else, and even his critically acclaimed dramas. I mean, he's still always going to be, I think, one of the most complex actors of our time because he is so multifaceted. Absolutely.
Although it's interesting what you're saying about the physicality in this minute, because it does seem as if like these guys have a little rehearsed thing. Because when they go to sit down, it's actually Two-Face seems to initiate it. Like, they do the little arm stretch out, and then they reach out to each other. It does seem like they're having, like, this is, like, something, like, again, like children would do. Like a little secret handshake or something they have. And they're like, oh, we rehearsed this little bit that we do before we sit down to play and stuff.
Yeah, and it also feels like, I know it makes no sense with the timeline of the movie, but it feels like this isn't the first time they've done it. This is something they do every Friday night or something.
Yes. Oh, I completely agree. Actually, I kept imagining them sort of as like little kids on the playground who've known each other for years. And I was like, this is what it feels like. Absolutely.
Because obviously that decision was made. We've commented like several times in the build-up to this that like, wouldn't it make more sense if like Two-Face hated the Riddler? And again, in the novelization, he does. He absolutely despises the Riddler. But for some reason, they edited all that out, so they became real bosom buddies. So things like this would work. We're like, yeah, it seems like they're the best of friends and stuff.
I mean, villains deserve friends. Sorry, go ahead.
They do. But they left in a couple of bits earlier on where Two-Face starts off kind of hating him and not trusting him, but that just gets dropped really quickly. Yeah. And it's a shame because that would be... It would make more sense. Their characters don't fit together. And
how dare you, sir? How dare you?
Yeah, but sometimes that's a good thing. Like sometimes being the opposites and whatnot, that's cool. But I think there should be a bit more tension between the two of them that lasts. Because it does just get dropped after like 2 scenes.
I do wonder if that's, we're talking about, doesn't it seem weird that you think Two-Face would be the dom in any relationships? He's hanging out with Spice. But then the Riddler does come in and kind of dom him. Like maybe Two-Face is maybe he is the sub in these relationships. Maybe he's just like, I'm really into getting stuff done to me. Because I guess he is the scarred side. So maybe there's a kind of, he got, like, if we want to read it in some sort of sexual fashion. It's like, well, the side that's scarred would be the one who's submissive and sort of into that kind of stuff. And that's why maybe, because Two-Face, the dominant Two-Face personality, is the most prevalent throughout the whole movie.
Right.
And so the idea that, by the end, it's the Riddler who's the big hotshot in the chair, and Two-Face is just like his henchman, kind of standing back. It is kind of like, this guy came in and took over. And maybe that's why Two-Face kind of let him do it.
Well, I'll say, okay, in BDSM, there's always this stereotype of submissives actually being like super independent and strong in like vanilla land, which was always the joke I would play, because I'm actually a switch, but that was recently discovered in my brain. Usually I've always been a bottom and a submissive, but I'm so like aggressive and toppy that people automatically assume I'm a dom. But the truth is that even the strongest of us are like, okay, somebody else do it. I just want to be pretty now. Somebody else do it. And it's kind of like every interaction you have, there is a slight power dynamic, regardless of how we want to acknowledge it. There's always somebody who kind of knows more than you. Like in this instance, you guys are obviously the top, right? Because you are the kings of the podcast. You guys are the more knowledgeable ones, right? So I would be the bottom in this situation. And so it's kind of one of those things where maybe Riddler came in and just knew just enough more than Two-Face. And that's why Two-Face was like, okay, you do it, daddy.
Yeah, because he does turn the reins over to him without any kind of debate. Like, okay, I'm following you.
Yeah.
And we'll also note that, because, let's go throughout the scene. Let's just, they blow up a couple of bombs next to the Robin rocket. And eventually then, it's kind of notable that it's Two-Face who takes out Robin, because these are the two guys who are locked in eternal combat. So it sort of makes more sense that he be the one to blow up the boat rather than Riddler. Even though, and we'll talk about next week, Two-Face doesn't know who this kid is. Like, he doesn't know anything about him. When he's fighting him next week, he could just be like, so you're new? Do I know you? Like, why are you coming for me?
Well, if I can make one observation, too, is just like in general, when you said that, my brain went, so let me get this straight. Batman submissive Robin fights Riddler submissive the Two-Face. Like, it's kind of like perfect sub v sub.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Works out perfectly. I'd also note again, supervillains, I think it kind of passed over. Well, I guess he did, actually, because we commented on, the people of Gotham just know how to market. So Batman, of course, was a guy back at the start of '89. Was a guy going like, "I want you to tell all your friends about me. I gotta spread the word." That Batman's around. He's got the symbol. He's like, "Make sure everyone knows my symbol and stuff, because everyone knows what." And then, of course, the Joker will come along and be like, "Yeah, I got my face painted on the side of vans and on patches and my goons' elbows. Everyone has to know who the Joker is." Then the Penguin kind of came along. He wasn't so much like during the mayoral campaign. Yeah, all the Cobblepot with the umbrella pictures were around. But now the Riddler's he's taken a real note out of Batman's book of like, you've got these bombs underwater. No one's ever going to see them. But you better put a question mark on them. Just so people know that they're yours.
That's a good point. Yeah,
I didn't think about that either. Oh my gosh.
You got to brand everything. You never know.
Yeah. It's just like, I would say it was a mark of a supervillain. It's like, no, Batman did it first. I guess they're taking the cue from him. It's like, well, just in case our stuff gets mixed up in the battlefield. Like, I'll know. The Joker will know that that's my thing because it's painted bright orange. So, yeah, that's definitely mine.
It served Batman well doing this. So take his lead, copy him. Sometimes copying is a good idea.
I would laugh so hard if they had like a social media presence, like in this day and age where Riddler is like, wait, branding, make sure my Patreon has my symbol everywhere.
He's got a link to his OnlyFans.
Oh my gosh. Somebody should do that. You got to know, there's got to be a cosplayer out there who's so into the character. They're like, hi, I'm the Joker. Please join my OnlyFans. I'm very mean to Harley in these videos, but it's very hot.
Hey, from our searching around the internet to find various things to do with Batman, I promise you that exists somewhere. I haven't seen it for sure, but I know these fans will have done it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This is going to be coming down the lines. It's like me and John reviewing Batman pornos.
Yes!
For the Patreon. Just like,
please, if you do it, let me do it with you. Oh my gosh.
Minute by minute.
This is like after Batman and Robin's like, yeah, we're out. So I guess we've got to jump to the porn movies now. That's the only things we got left.
It's the next logical step, right?
Absolutely.
People are like, when you know those Chris Nolan movies? Like, no. Like, they made this porno in between now and then, so we gotta go through... They made like 18 of them. We gotta do all of them.
Oh my goodness.
They probably did as well. Oh, God. But in the minute itself... so they do manage to hit Robin, as we said, but he ejects just in time. And I'm sad. I went frame by frame looking at him ejecting, and it still looks great.
Nice.
I don't know how, because it's not a guy actually ejecting. That'd be crazy. Is it a model? Like, I couldn't actually find them saying anything on it specifically. Just for that one shot, I mean, not for the boat in general.
It is weird, because like some of the shots of him in the boat, a few of them are like, that ain't Chris O'Donnell in that boat. That's some other guy. But I think it's like, weirdly in this whole sequence, a lot of it really does stand up, because as we're talking there like last minute with Neil, that Batwing, that ain't CGI, that's a model. Yep. So that's why it still looks good. And the boat, they made a boat, so that's why it looks good.
Yes.
But the ejecting looks good as well. It's weird.
Yeah, I guess it is.
I tried to see if any boats had an ejector seat. And I couldn't actually find any. I think this is the world's first. There was a seaplane, so that sometimes is a boat that has an ejector seat. Yeah, but that's about as close as I could.
I kind of took it like ejector seats in boats would be standard. I don't know why that's in my mind.
Why would you eject from a boat?
You would just jump overboard. But this boat had like, you know what I mean? They needed an ejection. I think that's really actually maybe just, again, going back to like the imagination of a child. If you were a kid building an awesome boat, would you not want like something really red? Be like, bro, who doesn't want to hit a big button and just like, whooshoom, you know?
No, you're right, because I had loads of toys as a kid of planes and things. And, when you're playing, you just smash them together and press the button and the little pilot toy flies out. And you think it's the coolest thing ever.
Absolutely.
I got that from like playing with Killian, like I live with a little 2-year-old, Brittany, so you don't know, and he is like, we got like the TIE fighter toys from Star Wars, and just like he is amazed because they're a little missile that shoots out, that button, and the thing flying out. He's just like, this is the greatest thing that has ever existed ever. So you have to press that button like 50 times because he needs to see it over and over and over.
Oh, that's
again.
the only problem, isn't it? After the first 20, you're like, oh, geez.
Oh, absolutely. I do kind of wonder though. I would love to talk to the writers and the people who create these films to ask them like, how much did you just spend playing with your children, and then go, oh, we're putting this in the movie. Like, we're gonna put this scene in the movie.
Oh, you would be surprised that like Tommy Lee Jones only took this role because his son said you should play Two-Face, like, and he saw the kid playing with an action figure, and he's like, oh, this guy, okay. And then Joel Schumacher Joel Schumacher again was like, I was familiar with the comics, but I wasn't familiar too much with Two-Face. But then I saw that the action figure was like a big thing with kids. So,
aww, that's so sweet.
Well, it's nice that you say that's sweet. Other people will be like, oh, what these goddamn consumerist assholes are all just trying to make the toys.
Hey, no, they're giving the people what they want.
Yep, exactly. Nothing wrong with that.
It's like,
please,
appease me, please. Appease me.
Although that's another thing, Brittany, though, because again, it's tragically no longer in the film. But like, I'm a big fan of the Batmobile in this movie. Like, I think it's an amazing Batmobile. John, not so much. And it's been a very sort of contentious issue throughout the season. Like, where do you stand on it?
Gosh, I can't say that I have much of an opinion, to be honest, because anything that makes me go voom voom makes me happy. Like, I'm a very simple person. Is it fast? Is it voom voom? Let me have it.
So you're like Chase then, because she likes the bad boys who are into those kind of things.
I mean, honestly, I think being bisexual makes me think like anything that makes anyone go ooh is like perfect, girl or boy, motorized or not. Like, that's what I want. I'm very easy.
But yeah, like we're kind of coming toward like that's the end of the minute, really.
Yeah.
One thing I would say we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it is that of course they made a movie of Battleship, and of course that movie starred Liam Neeson, who would go on to play Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins. So it's all connected. And also that movie also starred Josh Pence, who also went on to play Ra's al Ghul in the Batman movies. He was like the young version of Liam Neeson in Dark Knight Rises. So
whoa, I love that.
Got everything's connected. It's right there. I was going through the Battleship IMDb. It's like, there gotta be loads more Batman connections. Like, come on. But no, that was it. Those two guys were the only connective tissue. But unless Rihanna shows up in a Batman film. You know.
Oh my gosh, though. Her as Catwoman, I would totally watch that.
But although at this point, Brittany, we always do ask the guests about like their history with the movie. Like, were you wrapped up in Batman Forever fever back in '95, or like what do you remember when you first saw it or anything?
Oh, I mean, I literally had all the DVDs of all the Batmans up until recently when I was traveling, because I did solo traveling, so I couldn't take them all with me. And I just love rewatching them. I mean, I'm a big imagination person. I think imagination is like one of the most beautiful things. And when you're watching these films and these grown people, again, being childlike, there's nothing more nostalgic. So for me, I'm living off the nostalgia of it, 100%. It was a bonding experience for me as a kid with my brothers and sister, where we would pretend we were Robin or Poison Ivy or whatever, and we would, recreate these scenes. I don't think I knew anyone in my childhood growing up who didn't love them. Absolutely.
That is true, yeah. I don't think there was ever a child I met, like, a peer back in the day who was like, nah, I'm not into Batman. I was like, no, everybody is into Batman.
Well, there's a role for everybody. Like I was saying earlier, like, the women are roles that are fun to play. So there's a role for it doesn't feel like a boy movie, it feels like a people movie, and it's so good. The whole series is just so good.
Yeah. But, you say the whole series is just so good. Of course, we'll be covering Batman and Robin next year, Brittany. So if you have any minutes in particular of Batman and Robin that you would want to cover, just let us know, because you're more than welcome to come back for it.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
I think the only minutes that have been claimed are Poison Ivy inside that big pink gorilla outfit. Like, someone was very much like, that's got to happen.
But I mean, everyone's going to want to talk about Ivy, right? She's the best thing in the movie.
Gosh. Oh my gosh. Everything I've ever wanted and more.
I don't blame you one bit. No. There's a lot of bad things in that film, but Ivy's not one of them.
That's a good tagline.
But yeah. Thanks for coming on, Brittany.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is so much fun, guys. Like, you're just a hoot and a half. And I told my brother, I was like, I'm gonna go do one of the best podcasts ever. It's so funny. It is like the best concept. And I explained the concept to him, and he was like, that actually sounds kind of interesting. I was like, no, it's super funny. Like, you don't think you could create content out of a minute, but there's so much to say.
Oh yeah, wait till we get to the credits, then show him an episode. Because for some reason we make the credits episodes go like an hour and a half or something.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so great. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh no, thank you. But we will head off into the dark night. Brittany, would you like to plug anything, like your Patreon or anything at all?
Oh gosh, well, if anyone is interested in learning about alternative relationships or lifestyles, check me out on patreon.com/Brittany Simon, BrittanySimon, and you can come join my fun little family there.
Hey, do that, everybody. And come and speak to us on Facebook at the Bat Minute Listeners Cave, all that stuff, Twitter, Instagram. You're sick of me saying it by now. I say it every damn episode, pretty much. But most importantly, buy a t-shirt on TeePublic or come to our Patreon, because that helps us in innumerable ways, and also give us a review on iTunes. That's always a lovely thing to do. So do that, and we will see you again next week for more Bat Minute Forever.
Next time, Holy Bob and Robin. The boy wonder proves buoyant after his battleship is junked, while more danger descends in the form of frogmen punks. But as a bird boy beginner gets basted in Gotham's Bay, can his bat buddy survive a blast from a box-based death ray? Find out next week. Same Bat Pod, different Bat Minute.
Ba-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.